So next, let's group the daytime birds of prey. Our first group, which I've mentioned so far, are called Buteos. These are your soaring hawks, and there are 4 of them. These birds have broad wings and broad tails. They're built for soaring for long periods of time riding on the thermals. They hunt mostly mammals by scouting the ground from above, either sitting in a tree or by soaring. I like to think of them kind of like built like a parachute. This allows them to stay aloft for long periods of time without getting tired. Probably the most well-known of the Buteos is the red-tailed hawk. Red tails are Buteos, and you can see how they use the broad wings and broad tail to stay aloft while expending very little energy. As I mentioned earlier, Buteos have thick, stubby toes. People describe the feet as clubby. Eagles have similar feet. All other hawks and falcons have long, slender toes and toe pads. Toe pads are right here. They're little nodules under the toes. Red-tailed hawks are the largest Buteo in Pennsylvania, and they're easily identified by their red tail. However, they don't get their red tail until they reach about 2 years old. Prior to that, the tail is dark and light brown striping. Some birds retain this coloration for the full 2 years. Some will transition to a red tail during their second molt. This is a 2-year bird. And some birds will retain the striping for the first year, but after their first molt, the tail will appear to have a wash of red in the striping before growing in a solid red tail in their second molt. Most hawks change eye color as they mature, and red tails are a great example. The adults have rich mahogany colored eyes, while the juvenile's eyes are a khaki color. Tiberius is our educational red-tailed hawk. He arrived at 1 year old after being hit by a car. He's now 5, and we got to watch him change from juvenile to adult. The coolest thing was watching how his eyes changed. I had thought that the eyes would gradually darken, but what happened was they changed from the bottom to the top. At age 2, his eyes were half tan, half mahogany. The mahogany on the bottom, the tan on the top. Seen here at 4 years old, his eyes are mahogany with a slight sliver of light color still on the top. From the front, adult red tails can have a rusty chest. With the juveniles, it's white with brown. Many red tails also have a dappling of brown across their midsection that appears like a belt in flight. However, individuals can vary, and this belt can be very subdued or even completely missing. One way to identify a red-tailed hawk in flight from below is by the patagial mark. This is a dark stripe of color on the inside of the wing on the leading edge, extending from the body to the elbow. Notice that this bird has a subdued chest band, which might be difficult to see, but the patagial mark is clearly visible. This mark is also present in juveniles who won't flash that bright red tail to help you identify them. Now, there are always exceptions. Frequently flying over Red Creek right now is a leucistic red-tailed hawk. This bird is pure white with only a red tail. The patagial marks on this individual are extremely light and difficult to see. Our second largest Buteo in Pennsylvania is a rough-legged hawk. As you can see, they also have a broad wings and broad tail for soaring because they're Buteos. These birds only winter in Pennsylvania. They summer and breed in the Arctic, so they're only here from about the end of October through February. Its silhouette suggests a lanky red-tailed hawk, but in flight, it can be differentiated from a red tail by the placement of a dark wrist patch. Here you can see the positioning of the marks under the wing of both birds. The rough-legged hawk will sometimes hover while it's hunting, flapping its wing to stay in one place. You don't see this with other Buteos. The rough-legged hawk is so named because its feather growth extends down the ankles. This most likely comes in handy to keep its legs warm in the colder climates which it prefers. The feathers do not cover the feet, however, as we've seen earlier, that's reserved only for owls. The rough-legged hawk has a light and a dark morph coloration. Light morph birds have a light head and a dark belly band and a white tail with a dark terminal band. Dark morph birds are dark throughout, except for silvery flight feathers on the underside of the wings. When perched, the dark morphs can be confused with juvenile red tails, which have long feathers that plume out and over the ankle area, but it doesn't grow from the ankles. One way to distinguish between the two is the shape of the head. It is said that a rough-legged hawk has a large head. I think it has a wider head, but it also looks like it has a shorter neck and a smaller beak. To me, the face of a rough-legged hawk appears more feminine, less fierce than that of a red tail. I'm going to describe our last two Buteos together because they are very similar and often confused. These are the broad-winged hawk and the red-shouldered hawk. Now, the broad-winged hawk is smaller of the two. It weighs about a pound and it's 13 to 17 inches in length. Its wingspan is 29 to 39 inches. And you can see the size of the red-shouldered hawk. What happens here is the females are larger than the males. And a female broad-winged hawk might actually be the same size as a male red-shouldered hawk. If you can see the rusty wash color on the top of the wing right here, then you're good. You know you have a red-shouldered hawk. When they're perched, the broad-winged hawk looks short and stout, where the red shoulder has a more sleek appearance. When viewed from the back, the broad wing has pretty much solid chocolate brown wings and back. The red shoulder will have white tips on the secondary wing feathers. From the front, the adults look quite different. The red shoulder is more colorful with orange barring across the chest. The broad wing is more of that chocolate brown wash, but it is in the form of teardrops. Juveniles can be difficult, but there's one thing that stands out. Young broadwings have a pale throat right here, bordered by lateral throat stripes that vary from dark brownish to black right here. The throat stripes are well defined and they don't bleed into the throat. Red shoulders have that same cream or buff colored throat, and it's also bordered by dark lateral throat stripes, but these stripes are often messy and they bleed into the malar region and throat. They also both have a gular stripe, which right here, this little stripe right in the throat. But in the broadwing, it's very thin, very well defined. In the red shoulder, it's big, wide, and sloppy. And what this does is, from any distance, the broadwing looks like it has a white throat, where the red shoulder looks like it has a dark throat. In flight, the first thing you want to look for is for a dark stripe on the trailing edge of the wing, the trailing meaning the back. If it's there, you have an adult. See this black line right here and black right here. So we know we have an adult. If it's not there, then you have a juvenile, and the two are discerned differently. If it's an adult, you now look at the tail. If it has one wide band right here, you have a broad wing. However, contrary to what's stated in field guides, broad wings don't just have one wide white stripe. They have 2 to 3. See right here? But depending on the position of the bird, that the upper stripes are often hidden. So all you might see is the one white stripe from below, but it's possible to see more. So don't let that throw you off. Okay. Where the red-shouldered hawk, they have 3 small white stripes. You can also look at the wing tips. Broad-winged hawks have 4 notched primaries. 1, 2, 3, 4. Red shoulders have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I don't expect you to count the fingertips, but what this does is it serves one purpose. 4-notch primaries make the wingtip look more pointed, where 5 make the wingtip look more blunted. Juveniles are a bit tougher because a juvenile broad-wing hawk might have tail bands like an adult, or it could have thin, similar stripes to a red-shouldered hawk. The wing of a red-shouldered hawk has lighter color feathering near the carpal region. This can often be seen from below as a light wing just under the wingtip. Overhead, especially in strong light, juvenile red-shouldered hawks show a distinct pale crescent-shaped region in the base of the primaries. This is called a wing window. When seen, this mark is distinctive for the species, and you know you have a red-shouldered hawk. However, not seeing it doesn't automatically eliminate the species. With juveniles, the 4 to 5 notch primaries is the same as the adult. Also remember how I described the appearance of the throat color. It can be seen even when it's in flight. A juvenile broadwing will appear to have a white throat right here, where the red shoulder, its throat will look dark.